Yep.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today. This is another one of the Balance webinars. Today, we're going to be covering digital PR in financial services and looking at the power of online media relations. We've got about a half-hour talk. We've practiced it a number of times, so it could be anywhere between 20 and 45 minutes, but it should be half an hour. And we've got some Q&A afterwards. So speaking of what's happening today, we're going to be covering digital PR, defining it, how it differs from maybe traditional PR, the importance of backlinks, types of links that financial services brands need. If anyone has got their mute off, would you mind popping it on for me, just so we can all hear? Thank you. Then we've got the sort of sources of brilliant stories, including data, but also our experts. Then we'll talk a little bit about offering exclusives and building that network and what you can do there. The state of journalism, we'll finish with some best practices, and then we'll have a Q&A. We'll also have some case studies interspersed to it all, so you can see it in action. So who are Balance? Well, Balance is a marketing agency and consultancy dedicated exclusively to financial services brands. And what does that mean? Well, we're used to the specific challenges that financial services face. Often you have very short-term return requirements, but with very big long-term strategies. Undoubtedly, regulation is a key part of our lives in marketing financial services. And of course, I've found in my experience that we tend to be under-resourced compared to other other sectors, companies of a similar size. So we have to work harder and make our money work harder for us. So with all of those challenges, we've formed Balance. Balance is part of the Liberty Marketing Group, which has been going for about 15 years and is a team of about 40 plus digital experts. The team have managed SEO, PPC, content marketing, social, of course, digital PR, and training for the companies across the list there. Those are just the financial services ones. Of course, they've worked across many more. Your speakers today are Emma Hull, who will be who's our digital PR lead, and myself. I'll let Emma introduce herself.
Thanks. Hi, guys. Nice to see some familiar faces this morning. But yeah, a quick intro to myself. So as Alex said, my name is Emma. So I've been working in PR for the last 7 years or so, but more specifically in digital at the Liberty Group for the last 6, and Balance since we launched a couple of months ago. So my current job is PR lead at the Liberty Group. So as well as ensuring that my team is making sure they're hitting the KPIs in terms of links and coverage, I'm also in charge of producing our clients' PR strategies to ensure our financial clients are going to get the most from their digital PR activity as well.
We had a lot of debate about the pictures in this slide. I've got this blue steel thing going on, whereas Emma's munching a croissant, but I feel like it's a really PR thing to do is to eat a croissant and have a coffee.
Yeah,
so
it wasn't a croissant, it was an apple spread. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's in the cup though, so that's okay. Who am I? I'm Alex Murphy. Most recently, I'm the co-founder of Balance. We launched that this year. Prior to that, I was the marketing director of Admiral Insurance for 5 years, and prior to that, I was head of performance and digital in Coca-Cola and so on. So, whilst digital PR affects a number of things, it affects brand awareness and consideration and so on. It also obviously clearly has a big part to play in SEO, which is, as we all know, is very important. So if we just take a step back for a moment and look about SEO as a whole, you can think of it in 3 sort of separate parts. You've got your on-site SEO, which tends to break down to the technical aspects, you know, the schema, your performance, your indexation, all of those things that make a good site rank well. But of course, what makes a good site? Good site? Content. So then there's the quality content that we produce, the keywords that we're targeting, or more appropriately, the audiences we're targeting, and of course, the engagement that brings. But of course, you've got your offset SEO. And this is where digital PR, though it has an impact in other areas, is really where it plays. And that's primarily in domain authority. You know, it's building links, it's building a presence online, and it's meaning that people will trust us. But of course, trust is a big issue, and even more so in financial services, which is where EAT comes in. Now, forgive me, those of you who, I know there's some familiar faces here, you would have seen our previous EAT webinar, which is a whole half hour specifically on EAT. This is a very quick précis for those of you who aren't familiar with it or weren't on that one. So very quickly, history lesson. 2018, Google had a trust problem. There was a lot of, frankly, rubbish online But it was unfortunately rubbish around things like financial services and health, and that's quite dangerous. Your health and your wealth, or your money and your life. So they decided to bring in a lot of quality rater guidelines, and these are people, literal people, not the robots, that are looking at the results and assessing them for quality. And they'll then train the algorithm, whereas it's not actually an algorithmic thing, it's how the algorithm is trained. So they looked at expertise, what quality is this content rich and demonstrating expertise? Does it have authority? Are these people who generally talk about this sort of topic? And does it have trust? Is this a site that is trusted? Does it function correctly? All those sorts of things. Are there rewards? Are there testimonials? Now, no doubt as a result of the influx of digital over 20 and 2021, for obvious reasons, Google realized there was still a lot to be done. So at the end of 2022, they updated EAT to have an additional E, so for experience. And this is how content conveyed lived experience to users. Trust underlines it all, of course, and still underpins everything. Now, with the acceleration recently of AIs, and I'm sure you've seen many things about AIs and ChatGPT recently, and large language models, it's even more important that this content is producing quality. Google's recent changes to their helpful content guidance, they literally say, is this content written or reviewed by an expert with demonstrable experience? So this has become increasingly critical, and we'll talk about experts later on. So where does digital PR fit into EAT? Actually, well, everywhere, really. If you think of the EAT pyramid, which you might have seen before, it starts with experience at the top, which is the author, the people who are talking about this. The expertise, which is the richness and the quality of the content. Is it using data in a good way, and so on. The authority, is this somewhere? And is this something that fits into the content strategy? Is it something they talk about generally? Is there something they would have authority to talk about? And this isn't just domain authority, this is topical authority. And then finally, trust. Yes, technical things like does the site work, all that, but who else trusts this site? So digital PR plays a part in all of this. It can get experienced people to talk about things for your clients. It can produce fantastically data-rich content to sell in, which we'll talk about. That's our secret sauce in a lot of ways. Obviously, authority is a big part of what PR as a whole, but digital PR builds for a brand. And then going into trust, well, that's what it's all about. So, over to you, Emma.
I guess a really good place to start would be actually giving you guys the definition of digital PR. So I guess this is sort of creating stories that puts your brand at the forefront, typically made with the aim to generate a lot of backlinks to your website, which will ultimately increase sort of where you rank on Google, your online presence, brand awareness, all contributing towards revenue, which is obviously really important to any brand or service. So revenue can be increased either indirectly through getting this bumping Google rankings from the amount of high quality backlinks that your site will get, or directly if your savings account, for example, is featured in a Best Buy guide, and people are then opening an account through that sort of brand recognition through that website, sending that.
Okay, so digital PR as a term. So I'm quite unusual compared to most found managers. Now, I spent 20 years on the dark side or the light side, depending on your point of view. Hopefully, most of you will think the light side, which is brand side. So you can be a little bit cynical about agencies. And you see something like digital PR, you're going, oh, God, have they just taken PR, stuck digital in front of it? Because everyone loves something with digital in front of it, all right? Is it just the same thing? Or is it just PR, but with a bit of website stuff? Well, no. They are distinct things. Huge amounts of overlap because it is PR at its core, but they are quite different focuses. So digital tends to focus on link building. If you go back a few years, you tended to call digital PR, for example, outreach, amongst other things. ATS obviously tends to deal with digital publications, digital places, blogs, etc., as some of its distribution network. It focuses a lot at the beginning on competitor analysis and gap analysis, down to the raw numbers. How many links does this competitor have versus you? What is their domain authority versus yourself? Looking at where the gaps are that need to be filled. And of course, there is an advantage of PR. Whilst you couldn't necessarily measure in real time the brand impact of what it's doing, you can definitely see what it's doing in terms of driving traffic and improving your SEO. Traditional, on the other hand, tends to focus a bit more on other areas. So yes, there is the obvious thing that they tend to do radio days, TV appearances, get you on that sofa and that chat show. That's a good job for traditional PR people. They tend to sometimes have more be behind physical events, work on press conferences, and also they deal with crisis management, which is absolutely a critical tool, particularly in a big brand. I've relied on traditional PR agencies for crisis management a number of times in the past. So absolutely, these things don't necessarily need to be mutually exclusive, and they both have their part to play and both support each other. But what do they both do? Well, they both look after, have a press office dealing with requests in and out. They tend to build media lists, which Emma will talk about later, build good press releases. They do relationship building. They'll have target placements. It just may mean that you might want to be targeted to reach on a certain blog. They might want to put you in a certain magazine. It's still the same sort of thing. And of course, what is it all for? It's not just getting your name out there just for vanity's sake. It's raising the awareness of your brand, but also through getting your message out there, if it's something that resonates with your audience, raising the consideration of your brand. So people actually want to buy from you, don't just know about you.
So yeah, I'll start with talking about what is a backlink first. So you guys probably recognize them, but this is when a website or publication will add a hyperlink to its own copy. These can typically be recognized with underlines and being in bold, and they basically, when you click them, they obviously send them through to a separate website to its own. But what this does is ultimately sends a signal to Google to say you guys should trust this website, because we obviously do. And the more backlinks of good quality that a website gets, the more this will contribute towards those the Google rankings. But the three types of links that I'm going to talk about on this slide are do follow, no follow, and affiliate. So I'll talk about the first two. So a do follow link does exactly what I just said. So this link will tell Google to trust the website that they're linking to, whereas no follow, as you can imagine, does the complete opposite, although it is up for a little bit of debate. So some people do say that they don't pass any authority at all, whereas some say that Google will still see it as a bit of a ranking factor, just not as highly as much as they do follow. And then we do have affiliate links. So a publication might use an affiliate link to generate an extra bit of revenue for themselves through sort of commission structures. So this works by a website sending a user towards a specific product. For example, a savings account listed in a best savings accounts list on the Best Buy guide. And when that person clicks through to that savings account and signs up, that specific publication will then get a small bit of commission. But don't worry, not anyone can do this. You guys have to come up with sort of an agreement before they start just advertising your links. So you will have to accept the publications that you want to use affiliate links beforehand. So I could just set a blog tomorrow and start gaining money. Basically, you guys have to have that initial agreement to discuss how much money and stuff they're going to get.
There goes my pocket money. Right. Okay, so what are the types of links that finance brands need? Particularly within financial services, there's a huge amount of affiliation or B2B links. So a lot of financial services brands will actually already get huge amounts of B2B links going towards them. Insurers obviously have aggregator links. When you're in a bank, you tend to link to brokers and back. There's lots of B2B type links. Trade press will cover trade stories, particularly if you're on the stock market and you're a publicly listed company, you'll have links for those things. And these are all great links to have, and they all raise the brand and get traffic to you, and they obviously serve the business in many ways. However, big B2C sites such as the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, Good Housekeeping, etc., they all have very high domain ratings. And as they cover a range of topics, often you can find a story that they'll be interested in picking up. Now, typically saying the word the Sun and quality together on the same slide is a bit of an anachronism, but actually the Sun and the Daily Mail, whilst not being known as the most trustworthy, they are sites with huge domain ratings above 90, and Google sees them as authoritative. Now, many of your competitors might have previously invested in traditional PR side of things. So if you can make movement with mainstream publications, it gives your brand a head start when it comes to looking at your backlink profile. And of course, all of this helps with your authority and EAT. Now, the more links you can get from relevant press, B2B press, B2C press, it gives you a very varied backlink profile. Now, ultimately, because you've got a wider range than your competitors, when they eventually do invest in digital PR, and they will if they haven't already, you're already going to have this head start, or as they say, a moat around yourself. It's going to take them a lot of work to catch up. Now, quality websites. I know, like I said, it's a bit of a mismatch there, but quality websites always trump quantity. Now, what we've seen more and more these days is that you'll have companies websites going, you know what, we'll get you 100 backlinks for 50 quid tomorrow, and it sounds great, right? It sounds easy. It sounds like a quick leg up. Okay, I need to go to lots of links. I've been told in the past I need lots of links. Actually, if you look at a lot of these sites, even if they've managed to buy a site previously with high domain authority, they're rubbish sites. They're not going to send you traffic for starters. And also, they're the sort of things that the authority they lend you is very flimsy. It can go in the blink of an eye. And there are some very big websites in financial services that have, through a lack of real quality referrers, seen big drops in rankings in the recent year or two. So quality websites will always trump quantity. Having several sites with lower domain ratings, going back to say, it's far less effective than having one or two well-known publications sending back to your brand. And as I said, this isn't just about playing the PR, playing the SEO. It's literal visitors, unique visitors coming to your website. And of course, the more people who come to you, the more people who know about you. So this is why also pushing out news that isn't just your standard PR, like they've launched a new product, or there's a new office dog, or look, we've won an award. That's always good stuff. It's all great stuff, but valuable content, rich content is key, and that's what we'll move on to.
Yes, I guess the question is, how do you actually go about getting those valuable links linking back to you? So I'll talk through 3 different tactics that I would typically use, and probably 3 that you guys could do by yourselves. But yeah, the first one would be an expert comment. So this does exactly what it says on the tin, and this is where you provide comments to journalists that are writing articles on a specific topic in hope they'll provide a link back to your website. So you can sign up to journalist request services. They can be quite expensive, but a free one that you could use is Twitter. So by following the hashtag journal request, you can sort of scout through every day, and hopefully someone who's looking for a quote on money saving tips or mortgage rates or something will pop up, and you'll be able to respond with your own sort of 2 pence on that. Another option is to contact personal finance journalists or directly with something such as property predicting prices, again, money saving tips, in hope they'll either use it straight away at the timing's right, or they can search for it when they are producing an article around something similar. The second one we have is reacting to the news, which again is exactly what it says. And this is where a brand will react to something going on in the news to make their own sort of name the forefront of what is going on at the moment. You need to be quick with these stories, though, as most brands will typically reply straight away, and everyone sort of jumps on it at the same time. So getting something within an hour of a story breaking is absolutely key. So if a new, for example, on a new survey was revealed tomorrow that 90% of Brits are going to struggle with Christmas this year and the cost of living, then what you could do is use that sort of press release and that bit of news to create your own press release on how to best save for Christmas and how to start saving now, something like that, linking back to the survey just to show why it's relevant in this moment, and also sending it to the person that covered the original study as well, just so that they have an interest in that story. And then the third one is campaigns, which is a really, really crucial part of any PR strategy, as it will use unique data to create several stories to suit different publications. And Alex will touch on sort of how you can get that data in a little bit. But yeah, you can dive into your own internal data, for example. So you can look at things like what are people spending their money on, what are people worried about this winter with the cost of living crisis, how many people are worried, and things like that. So we have put in a little Monzo snippet at the bottom, and they produced a really good report in 2019 where they analysed the whole year everyone's spending. So they looked at which are the best clothing shops, where are people spending the most money, where are people spending the most money on takeaways, restaurants, bars, things like that. It was a really good way for them to use the data that they already had available to them and get those really nice little news pieces linking back to Monzo, basically. So yeah, just talk through this case study real quick, just rounding up some of the stuff that we've already talked about. So we worked for Profile Pensions very recently, who, if you don't know the brand, they help their users trace lost pension pots. So they came to us because they could see that they had competitors that were performing far better than them at the time, getting a load of news publications talking about them, ranking a lot higher than them in searches, and just generally had a much stronger backlink profile. So this project went on for around 6 months. So we had 83 links and bits of coverage from a range of different stuff. So this would be pushing out like expert-led releases, which we just talked about, pushing out some internal data that they already had on their site, that they didn't necessarily push out very effectively previously, and then splitting out that data as well to target different ages, different genders, different locations as well. And you can see that how these links actually made a huge difference with that bottom right stat there, with a plus 183% in organic sessions year on year. So you can see how all that comes together to make a site grow, basically. And then in here, you can just sort of see how this looks and the publications that link back. So you can see at the bottom right, we talk about location, the top sort of two, FT Advisor and Wealth Advice. We're talking about millennials and different ages. And then we've talked about the woman pay gap, gender gap there as well. So we can see how we've targeted different publications with different types of stories to get the coverage that we did.
I found out that I'm a millennial, and I don't know if I'm happy about it or not.
It's the way to go.
Yeah. Okay. So data sources. Now, obviously, when it comes to digital PR and content in financial services, having reliable and innovative data is key. But the good news is it's not always going to cost you a fortune to get there. There's a huge range of free data sources out there. I mean, we could list loads of them, but just a couple here. So land registry. When you get information about transactions and land transactions, that can give you a lot of insight for things like mortgages or for home insurance and lots of other things related to the home. So that's a really good source of information. Then, of course, Freedom of Information Act. You can use that to get data from public bodies. Now, what if you use that to find an angle like unfair landing practices compared to what maybe your business offers, things that are out there. Now, this is freely available information, but just because it's commonly available, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to be using it and using it well. So, we talk about leveraging common data in uncommon ways. It's about taking that hook, taking that information, looking at it and going, there's something here, there's a new angle here that maybe other people haven't covered yet, but people really want to know about. So I think use that gold mine. Now, another gold mine is internal experts. Now, we have a lot of old traditional PR which will go, okay, the CEO said this, CEO said that, and that's still very valuable. You go on LinkedIn, the CEO talks about something, it gets probably more information more interest than if the company talks about it, no doubt. But generally, the CEO is a very busy person. They can't be your only internal source for public awareness. So when you're thinking about PR stories, start looking at your other experts in the organization, product managers, HR, finance, customer services. I mean, for example, you want to talk about how your product solves a problem. The best people to speak to are not your content writer. It's going to be the product team themselves. This is the same for writing content as well as finding hooks to push out there. You're talking about how to manage staff things or well-being. Well, HR are going to be very well trained in these things. So let's talk to them. We just talked about how people are going to spend their money at Christmas and how to be financially astute. Well, you've got an entire department full of finance boffins. Let's go and have a speak to them. And of course, customer problems. No one knows a customer problem better than your frontline customer services. Sit with them for an hour, and it's so eye-opening. In my experience, it's been some of the best sources of stuff I've ever worked with, which then I've taken and worked with digital PR. So, use that data. They're all there, they're all sat, and I think they can really enhance what you do. And as I said right at the beginning of the call, expertise, experience, these are the things that are really helping with these days. So use it.
Yeah, so one thing that we really recommend is offering exclusives to specific publications. So if you run a competitor analysis before you start sort of any digital PR, you'll know exactly which publications you need to link back to your website just to get the benefit from it, really. Sorry. So a top way to increase open rates, replies, I guess the end goal of having coverage and links is to offer exclusive articles to key publications. So a lot of publications will be put off by mass outreach. So one bulk email just sent to hundreds of people, and will much prefer one-on-one contact with an exclusive story. And if you think you've not made it obvious that it's a mass outreach, then trust me, you've probably done the same thing as everyone else, and they definitely can. Then having the exclusivity of a story will make the article appeal more to their users, because it's the only place they can get it. And they obviously want this as a help with their own sort of goals of having article views and things like that. But they'll also really benefit yourself, as they'll be much more likely to pick up that story. So in the past couple of months, we have noticed a much higher open rate on our outreach server with subject lines that do include the word exclusive. I personally put it in capital letters just to make it stand out a little bit. But yeah, having that as the first line will make them probably click it a little bit more. We have noticed that in sort of the percentage of open rates that we get and even replies, to be honest. So I really do appreciate that not everyone has access to big media databases like Gorkana and MacGrath and things like that, which shows you everyone's journalist contact details, as they are really pricey, but there are several other ways that you can get journalist information. So one tool that I really recommend is Hunter. So this is a Google Chrome extension that will allow you to find any email address hopefully linked to that site. So it's not great for things like the Sun or Daily Mail, where there are hundreds of journalists who basically just upload their stories, but it is really good for like bloggers and company websites that don't necessarily have a contact page. So that's a really good thing that I would recommend getting to make sure you have those emails. But yeah, it's really important to make sure you find the right people to email to, rather than just emailing any old journalist, any old sector. So the best way to find the right person would be to check the previous bylines that they have written for a publication, just to prove that they're interested in similar stuff that you're going to be talking to them about. And then it's obviously worth hunting them down. So once you have checked the sort of bylines in, I don't know, Financial Times or wherever you want to send them to, and just making sure they're covering the right stuff, I would probably head to Twitter and find their Twitter handle and just seeing if they've got their email address in their bio. If it's not in their bio, one thing that you can do is hopefully find out an old tweet by just searching their little Twitter handle, followed by the word email. Hopefully it'll show up a tweet from, I don't know, 2020, where they have actually given someone their email publicly. But yeah, 100% definitely check their stories that they've written previously, just to make sure you're not emailing like a motoring journalist or a beauty journalist with something on how to save money for Christmas, because yeah, you will definitely get blocked. And I'm just going to touch on sort of the current state of journalism, because it has been a little bit messy in the past year or two. So it's been particularly hard for journalists, as there have been a lot of large organisations that have made hundreds of redundancies. I have friends working in the industry who've been made redundant in the past couple of years. It's just not been nice to see at all. What this has obviously done is made the amount of journalists a lot lower than it was. So journalists who are writing about specific subjects, so I don't know, personal finance journalist, for example, they are now changing to just journalists. So they're getting rid of sort of the little niches and just making everyone sort of in the same sort of area, really. But what this does mean is that journalists are now receiving, what you can see here, we put 800 pictures a day, which sounds crazy, but this is why half the emails don't get opened. So the cut through with stories is a lot harder than it once was. So you just need to ensure that your subject lines are, for them, worth opening. It's always a great first step, but once you've done that, sucking them into the story with great data, reasons why they should cover the story, and things like that, and just making sure you are giving those exclusives as well.
Okay, so I hate it when agencies talk about themselves, but this seemed like the best example for us to show that, we don't just talk the talk here, we walk the walk. So, as I mentioned at the top of the call, the Liberty Marketing Group is what we belong to. And when we decided we were going to launch Balance, we knew that just launching another agency, even though we're quite unique in that we specialize in financial services, that wouldn't be enough to get the word out. So we knew we had to launch with a big PR campaign. As a result, we did all the steps that we've talked about here. So first we gathered a large amount of data. So EAT is highly relevant to the audience, as we've talked about, and so was consumer duty. Now, that's probably a trigger word for a lot of you at the moment, or trigger phrase, but yeah, consumer duty and EAT. And there's a huge amount of overlap, which I've covered elsewhere, and you can find that on our website. But we did this analysis. So I sat in a room, so it was free, technically. I sat in a room and did analysis of about 70 websites and narrowed it down to about 50 in the end. And I analyzed each of them for the different criteria, their EAT, so their expertise, authority, and so on. Then we also did accessibility, because it was a big part of what was happening with consumer duty. You can see just the top corner there, that sort of little chart there with all the different scores, a lot of red, but some green as well. Then we created radar charts. I still get excited about the fact I got to do radar charts the first time in my career. And those radar charts started to help us really pull out some interesting factors. So we found that building societies were quite good at maybe certain trust factors, but very bad at demonstrating their internal expertise. We unsurprisingly found that aggregators are very good at topical authority, but not so good at demonstrating their trust factors. And then we found that maybe banks actually were surprisingly good at accessibility, but really poor at other things, and so on. We cut it in a million different ways. This then was turned into a PR story. Now, these are all very interesting things, but little interesting things are not enough. So we worked with them. I was like, well, okay, well, some of the big numbers here is 4 out of 5 financial services institutions are failing at trust signals. That's a big, whacking great headline. Okay, so and we put that failing in capitals just to appeal to the sun and so on. And so we wrote that up, and then Emma created a press release. Then she created, as you can see, this you can't really see the detail, but the bottom left is the email out with a bit of customization at the top, then the hook, then a lot of the rationale, so they know they're not putting out rubbish. So how we got to this, and then that got us a lot of coverage. Now this is just one example. This clip is from the FT. Stupidly took the FT off the top of it. This clip's from the FT, but we also got coverage from Marketing Week and dozens of other publications across financial services and marketing, because it was applicable for both. Now that's lovely to see in your first month of launch, but at that point it's still just vanity. So what does that actually mean long term? Well, of course, it benefited our SEO, which means that we now appear for a lot of terms around the audience that we're speaking to, people like yourselves. Yeah, so people looking for financial services marketing agencies, digital marketing financial services. We get thousands of impressions all the time. So what does that mean? Well, this bottom right chart was our impressions just from we launched. So when did we launch? Just in the middle of May. Boom, we're big, we're launching, and it's great. We've got lots of coverage. We start ranking very, very quickly for certain things. But putting our money where our mouth was also meant that we also didn't necessarily do the things that we should do. So as we start getting interest, as people get in touch with us, we'd like to work with you, as they should, our focus turned to the clients, which meant that we took the gas off our own PR. And as you can see, because we're still a new brand with no real baseline of brand awareness, that started to dip off quite quickly. You can see the chart on the right dip off. We had a bit of a spike, something went big or happened on LinkedIn or whatever, but then it dropped down to that baseline again. So we spoke to Emma and the team and went, right, we need to actually keep pushing this and keep getting our PR out there. So Emma started recutting this story with different angles, different stories, putting it back out there. And then even the same story started getting us coverage. So the point is that even we can fall afoul of not giving constant pressure for ourselves because we were focused on clients. So keep that a step up. Keep putting information out there. Keep recutting that story or working with a partner that can do that for you. And as you can see, the chart just goes up and up.
Yeah, that was a really nice one to do. But yeah, just talking about some best practices, if you guys were to head off and sort of do this yourself, or if we were to sort of help a brand, this is what we would typically do. So the first one we'd look at is A/B testing. And this is where we would take some sort of subject lines, so similar to what I talked about earlier, the importance of subject lines, but you trialing 2 or 3 different ones and sending each one to between 10 and 15 people, just to see which ones get the highest open rates, the highest amount of coverage, the highest replies and things like that. As you know, that one's going to be the strongest, and therefore you can then send that to the bulk of your media lists. The second one we put is following up. So typically I would only do this once. I don't want to be known as the spammer of the industry. So I would probably follow up 2 or 3 days later, just checking that they've seen it. And as much, you probably do think it's annoying, but you actually do surprisingly get a high amount of sort of uptake then, just, in case they have genuinely missed it. And then, customized press releases. So as you can imagine, the Sun don't write the same as the Telegraph and the Times. So what we would do is just create different press releases to suit different types of publications. So obviously for the Sun, it would just be a bit more basic and how they basically write, whereas the Times and Telegraph are really suckers for the additional data and things like that. Daily Mail always put a big word in capital letters in their headlines. So what we would do for Daily Mail is put that in our own press release, so that when they get that press release, they can envision how it would look on their own website. So these are probably 3 of the strongest practices that I would typically follow.
Okay, I'm just going to launch into the summary as we're getting up to 37 minutes. I'd just like to say that if you do have Q&As, but you have to rush off, we can stay on for a bit longer. Just type them in and I can follow up afterwards. So, in summary, digital PR is critical. There's few channels out there, and I've got to be honest, this hasn't always been a big focus for me for my career, but I can't think of another channel out there that ticks so many boxes in terms of brand awareness. It's cost effective and also helps with SEO, which is very important. So improves your brand through raising awareness and consideration by getting your reach out there and your message. It improves traffic. Rankings are all well and good and links are all well and good, but we want traffic to come to us. So it improves traffic by building a network of sites and publications that will link to you and that trust you. And it affects your SEO rankings for all the reasons we've talked about by improving key elements like domain authority and EAT. Now, it's collaborative. When it works really well, it's collaborative. It can build relationships with empathy, not just for your target audience, who you're building these stories for, but also for the people who are going to put those stories out there. Those poor journalists with 800 requests a day. It can work alongside internal PR teams or external traditional PR teams, benefiting both. They don't necessarily substitute for each other. They can augment each other. And it benefits from expertise outside of marketing. From your compliance team. No one panic, I don't think there's any compliance people here, but compliance teams to product teams to customer services, huge sources of brilliant hooks and angles. But of course, it's also creative. If you look at the front of our website, we talk about creativity and compliance. We talk about these words together. They don't have to substitute each other. Financial services can be extremely dull. It doesn't have to be. We can take data-led insight and turn it into valuable and high-quality engagement. We can shape common information and create uncommon angles that will interest people. And of course, very important to us all here, it can take small budgets and generate impact as big as large-scale paid campaigns. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. And now we're going to move to the Q&A. Just quickly before we move to Q&A, I'm going to close my window so I can actually see the chat. Don't forget to get in touch about the complimentary consultation that we are doing as a result of this talk for attendees. Okay, I'm going to switch down to and stop sharing. Stop sharing? Stop sharing. Okay, do we have anything in chat? No, we don't have any Q&As in chat. Oh, Abby's typing. I take that as a win. I feel like we just covered everything.
Yeah.
Right, so we don't have any Q&A. Oh, Abby, don't know. I feel like the pressure's on Abby King now because she looks like she's typing. Or because we've run up 40 minutes. Abby, the pressure's on. How many have we got? Abby, in terms of outsourcing backlinks, would you recommend to do this at all or with any?
If you mean like sort of buying links and sort of outsourcing it that way, there are companies like Fat Joe, Linkology and stuff like that, but I type so quick before. Yeah, as you can imagine, if we could all just buy links and have it for our site, we probably would. It's a nice, easy way to sort of get the links in there. So realistically, the best thing to do would be to get those links yourself and to sort of making sure you are getting stuff from like the Daily Mail, the Sun. They do sell links. Well, they don't sell links, but they sell features. So advertorial features that you've probably come across before, which again, Google recognises an advertorial thing. So the best way, I mean, we call it earned media for a reason. So the best way to do it is earn the media yourself and earn those links yourself rather than go to someone who can just buy it for you. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Abby, if you do a webinar, I will be the first person to ask a question, I promise. Okay, one from Laura. What is the best time to pitch journalists for results?
Nice question. So I would typically say don't pitch on a Friday. I mean, you know what it's like when we get emails on a Friday, we just kind of try to ignore it and put it to one side. So typically not on a Friday, whereas Mondays, Tuesdays in the mornings between 8 and 10 are probably the best time because that's when journalists sort of go to their meetings to discuss what they're doing. They'll have sort of their agenda and what they're writing. So typically in the morning, at the beginning of the week would be really good, but yeah, don't try and avoid a Friday.
Oof, what's the best backlink you ever
BBC, baby.
BBC.
That's the absolute golden link for anyone, but yeah, BBC is the absolute elite. And you get every client that comes to us will say, okay, I really want to get a BBC link. And it's like, yeah, everyone does. But yeah, we have had one or two in our time, which has been really great to get.
Oh, there you go. That's a really good question.
Good question. Pitch to publish. Depends on the story. I mean, like, we talked about earlier stuff being really timely and sort of reacting to the news. So, the best thing to do is get stuff over straight away, and you should see coverage within the hour, whether it's just from one publication or from a few. But yeah, typically if it's something that's already going on, you'll see it straight away. Whereas if it's something more like, I don't know, expert talking about Christmas saving tips, or something it is timely, but not, doesn't need to be done there and then. It might be something they just bank over the next couple of weeks. So it could be anything from an hour to sort of a week. But yeah, it's always important to chase them as well, because sometimes they do say they'll cover something. And then, if they say they'll cover it on a Wednesday and it becomes Wednesday, just check in and see if you can find the coverage and just see if it's still going live, just in case they had any issues or need more data or stuff like that.
It's very fast the other way around, though. So not really pitch, but if a journal gets in touch, like we talked about the stories or response or something like that, responding as quickly as possible is brilliant. Yeah. I get approached by journalists to talk about various marketing things, and I've on the Slack gone, so-and-so for Marketing Week has asked me to speak about X, and about the next message from me is like an hour later going, I've already talked to them and it's live. It's like bang, bang, bang. They want to put something out and they look for a last minute expert. Any opportunity like that, it should be, if possible, a top priority. Emma gives me fake deadlines for response source. She goes, this needs to be done by 2. And so then I panic and get it done by 2, and it's like 3, just to get as quick a reaction as possible. And on the brand side, internally, we've actually I've built in escalation procedures. So if you do need someone from an expert internally, don't wait until you have it. Go, okay, if this comes from a big publication, particularly a decent one, how do we get this person to jump on it within an hour so we can go back? And have that process in place and speak to them about the importance of it. Use this deck if you need to, or get me to speak to them. But it absolutely pays dividends, and it's free, so just definitely do it.
What we try and do as well is any quotes that we do get from our clients, we do save, so that if a similar question was to come up, in 6 months' time, 3 months' time, we don't have to go through the whole process again, and we will just have something we can quickly copy and paste over in a super quick time as well.
Oof, we got a PR attribution problem here, challenge here. What's the best way to isolate specific benefit success of backlinks versus showing more general organic session growth? Oh, that is a really challenging question.
So it is quite hard, I think, to separate digital PR from sort of other sort of areas of SEO that we're sort of working on. And it's always been said that link building and digital PR and getting those links are 1/3 of sort of the overall the top 3 ranking things, basically, ranking factors.
I didn't realize you'd finished. Yeah. I was going to say, you hit that's an hour in itself, Josie, but it's really interesting. Is the how do you measure the impact of proactive PR in a way versus what you would just grow naturally? I suppose for us, you can almost see it. It's easier in a new business or a startup or so on, because you can see what happened when we eased off the proactive stuff and the organic growth. So in those instances, it's normally quite straightforward to see. When a business is much more established, it's much more over time. When you had, and you'd create almost like a balanced scorecard, and you go, we noticed that when we got a huge amount of links from story here, our growth grew up this year by this proportion. But when we didn't have it here, and you have to do it over a much longer period of time in a big business to separate the signal from the noise. But it's a really good question. It's just almost too complex but I'm happy to talk about it offline if you want to, because there are ways to do it. But when you're a newer business, it's easier to see, as we demonstrated. We've got one from Nate.
Yeah, I think you just kind of touched on that. So how long would you say it takes to see an improvement in rankings and traffic after and in the backlink? So again, I think it depends on the size of the site. So as Alex talked about balance earlier, we're a fairly new site, so any sort of authoritative links would have helped. And as you sort of showed, straight away we started to pick up. If it's a site such as, BBC, for example, again, if they're getting links, it might not get the same, any sort of boost really, because they're already getting all these links to them. But it does typically depend on also the site that is linking back to you, how long that site will be taken to crawl. It really does depend. Sometimes you'll see results after a month. Sometimes it might be 6. But yeah, it is really hard to pinpoint the exact amount of time that would actually take. It just depends on how big your site is, where the link's coming from, any extra additional work you're doing towards the SEO strategy as well. but they all should really contribute really well to it. So if you do see a massive spike 2 months after you push out a really good story, you should really be able to attribute that to that work, basically.
I think you've used a really good word there, Nate, which is not getting the backlinks, but earning the backlinks. And that's a big difference. You know, how quickly after buying hundreds of backlinks, you could get lucky and it could really give you a real boost really quickly. But it's going to be, you're building castles on sand, basically, if you're doing that. Earning backlinks are much more evergreen and much more valuable and much more likely to have a sustainable impact on your brand.
I think as well with buying backlinks, Google is as clever as it is. It can pick these things up too. They know which sites are typically paid for sites and things like that. So Google will recognise this, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of months or in the next couple of algorithm updates, they will sort of say that, you know, we obviously know Google sees it as bad, but if there's some special way that they do spot these things.
Nate's got a good question about the practicality of it. So do you get the link to go to the product page, or do you go to the home page? Are you happy for it to go to the home page?
Happy for homepage, but yeah, product page is much more preferred. Harder to get, but more preferred. But I guess those things do come hand in hand. You know, if you had a new savings account, I keep bringing up savings accounts, but if you had a new savings account, the more links that you'll get into that specific product page, the quicker it'll sort of link up. When it's to the home page, you know, you have many more links on that home page, you know, all your different buttons, which means the link equity is going to be spread out a lot more further. So your product page will probably get, you know, less than a tenth, less than a 1% of the actual equity than you would get if it came direct to that product page. But when a site is brand new, you need sort of any link you can get. So the homepage links are really beneficial. But with campaigns, we always try and make like on-site content for it, so that journalists have a specific reason to link back. And on that, we obviously have a content team here who do really clever internal links, so that when journalists do link back to that campaign website, the links that we want to be linked to are getting a little bit of equity that way as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other differences between digital and traditional PRs. And I had this conversation with a traditional PR agency last week, because we were talking about doing a session on just that. And they tend to produce content that gets pushed out, you know, to exist in other areas, you know, whereas digital PR more often will be working on content on your site with internal content writers or external content writers that then gets linked to. And there, in that instance, Emma says, you're driving them hopefully to that content, and then that content in itself has the links. So I call it link juice, but it's link equity is a much nicer word. It's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. I picked that years ago. But link equity through, and then that's all structured that way. So yeah, that's how we do it. Do we have any more follow-up questions? No? Okay. Right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Those of you still on here, I hope it's been valuable use of the last 40 odd minutes. Thank you, Cara. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Josie, for the rather challenging question. Now I need another coffee after that. And thank you very much. Have a great day. I'll follow up with all the resources, the talk, and we'll publish this and put it on our YouTube channel as well. So brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Bye, Ross.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.